Hello everyone, we've got our OTA patch discussion. So Adam Warlock's moving to a 5-4. I personally don't have hope that this will be impactful, but it might be. Darkhawk moving to a 5-4 as well. This hurts me on a personal level. I think it's fair. This card has been very strong for a long time. Hopefully it still be playable. Forge moving to a 2-2 from 1-1 satellite. I think this is more of a destroy nerf, continuing trying to rein it down, but it's cool to see other 1 costs getting benefits, and because of that, we have Ant-Man moving to +5, +4 power at max at full location. That's cool to see. American Chavez also moving from a 2-3 to a 1-2. I'm down. I don't know if this is going to see that much play, but I'm down to see how it matters. Another big change is Lockjaw moving from a 3-cost card to a 4-cost card. This is to rain down Hela and Thanos Lockjaw. This is pretty impactful, but I still think Lockjaw is strong enough that it'll see play, especially in Thanos. Maybe not as much Hela since it messes with the Black Knight, but it's still a powerful card that probably like to see play, even though it is significantly worse. Swordmaster moving and getting an extra power. I like to see that. I think this makes sense. Same thing with Vulture, getting an extra power when it moves. I like this. I think this makes sense. Let's get on to the details. What am I doing? Hello everybody, welcome back to the Educated Colin Snap channel. Today we're talking about the OTA updates. We've got 8 changes for you. We've talked about them already, but they're pretty impactful. I do think this is going to shake up the metagame in a pretty big way. So we're going to go into the details, talk about my thoughts on all these changes. Let's get started. Hey everybody, so we have a pretty big patch for you today. Let's get started. So first thing off is Adam Warlock. So this card has been pretty horrible for the whole game, honestly, in my opinion. Ever since it's been released, it hasn't really seen any play. It's just hard to play a 2-0 do nothing with some upside sometimes, right? Even when you get the ability to go off, a lot of times it doesn't guarantee that you're going to have a good time, and people also have direct counterplay in that they can just play to win that lane, and then you do nothing. And also, if you heavily invest to win this lane, then you usually struggle to win some of the other lanes. So there's just a lot of downsides to this card. So they figured, okay, let's change it. I'm in agreement with it. I think pretty much any card or any change will be better than its current form. So what they decided to do is make it a late game option. Now it's a 5-4. I would say that's still pretty weak. It does mean it has base power, so it can win lanes by itself. So it has a little bit of an upside in that now you can get some draws, especially if you're playing things like Magic or something like that, or Ramp. You get more draws. I would say that this really just fits into Hela. I would say that's the easiest consideration. However, I don't know if you really want to be playing this in Hela, because Hela really wants to be playing high-powered cards, and you're already playing cards like Magic and any of the other tools that don't really have base power. If you add this in, I don't know if that's going to be generally better. I guess it will be if you could get this to proc. So, and that's if you can get this to proc into MODOK, into Hela. Like, you need all those combos. I guess if you have that, then it's better. Now, the question is that worth playing this card? I don't know. I do think it's better than what it was before. I struggle to find where you really want to play this card. So that's my issue. However, I do think if this card was, like, good, it'd be problematic, right? There's only 12 cards. So if you could draw your whole deck, like, that's not fair. So probably a better change. Do I think this is a change that fixes Adam Warlock in essence? Probably not, but there might be a deck that can use this in like a meaningful way. I just don't really see it when thinking about how to play this card. I don't see where, okay, now you play this in this deck and it's significantly better. So that's kind of my issue. But I'm fine with them trying something new, because this is a card that has been bad forever, and I don't think you can solve it with a 2-cost version of this card in a meaningful way. So let's see what they have to say. When we're developing OTAs, we always check on cards that have been languishing. Do they? I don't know, which has included Adam Warlock for quite some time since the beginning of this game came out. We want every card to succeed somewhere. Adam Warlock is a special case given how powerful the character is creatively. So what they're saying is that they've been struggling to find a place because they want this card to feel powerful, which is hilarious considering the state of the card this whole game. But they want it to be something unique, something powerful, essentially. Consequently, the card is designed to make that fairly difficult to do so. We've considered reworking Adam Warlock, but like Spider-Man 2099, we're going to try something else first. So they're saying we'll see if this is an avenue. If not, we'll change the card even more. As a 2-cost, Adam Warlock needs to be more limited. As a 5-4, you'll be able to jump through more hoops to accomplish that. Sure. We're staying conservative with power here. So they do think that this card is on the weak side, even with release, because they don't want it to be broken, which is fair. This effect is not what we want to make commonplace for a lot of decks, but if you want to work with it, there are cards to be drawing, and maybe this is enough to get it done. Yeah, I'm not in the belief that this is enough, but I do see where they're coming from in that if this is like problematic, or if this is too good where a lot of decks are playing it, then it's also like very annoying. Like if every deck draws all their cards every game, it's like, come on. You know what I mean? So I can see this. It's better. I don't really believe in this fixing the card, but I'm down to try it out. Next up is maybe my saddest change. I'm a big Darkhawk fan. It was the card that really, the first like Series 5 card before they had like the Spotlight system or anything like that. This was the first card I just pulled off the track. Series 5, not everyone had it at the time, and it was really cool. Zabu was broken. It was might +2. Things like that, right? So definitely interesting to see. But yeah, they're moving it to 5-4. So I will say it did gain power, right? So it's 5-4. I would say like that's kind of generous in terms of the power level of the card. So turning it to 5-4 is probably going to still be a good card when you play on 5. It just loses all of the old synergy, the Zabu synergy that really worked very well. Also, things like playing Darkhawk Mystique last turn, right? Like that was something you could do. That's really gone. I would say you'd have to play Darkhawk turn 5 and then Mystique turn 6, things like that. So you do lose quite a bit. It's kind of the same, like 5-cost big card place. Similar to Dino, similar to Ronin, right? It's the same thing. It's an ongoing 5-cost big card. So it just hurts to see. This is probably fair to be honest, because Darkhawk has been, in my opinion, one of the best cards in the game since it came out. It's fluctuated up and down, but I would say like it's been a contender of a card to play and be happy in your deck, especially with Zabu. Like those combo was just like so very good. So just feels like they're trying to shift the meta game, and Darkhawk has been a good card forever, and they're trying to shift away from it. What do they have to say? This change has been in and out of our builds for several months now, as Darkhawk has consistently flirted with individual performance rate at the top of the game, feud multiple decks to similar heights. We've resolved to see what happened to Blob, and well, it looks basically the same. So he's still good, which, of course. Darkhawk spent a lot of time at the top of the mountains and individual cards. We're making this change to freshen the landscape. Okay, there's every chance we revert this down the road in a different metagame. That's a weird thing to say, in my opinion, but because it feels like this card isn't broken, it's just one of the best cards, but maybe we'll change it back if we... I don't know if they're going to do that. Like, that doesn't really sound like them, but definitely interesting. We do recognize that Zabu is a huge part of Darkhawk. Yeah, I feel like if you balanced Zabu, you'd probably balance Darkhawk more than the other way around, right? Like, Zabu's not good because Darkhawk's good, right? Darkhawk's good because Zabu's good. So if Zabu's like causing some of the issues, you'd rather fix Zabu than fix Darkhawk. But it's a good card anyways. Like I can see it. It's not all on Zabu. There are other decks with the cat that are healthy and fun. We'll see what Zabu looks like with a new best friend in March. Does that mean like this is what I interpret? we have a new 4-cost card coming in March, but there's no reason to play this 4-cost because Zabu exists. That's what I'm reading from this statement. But yeah, I don't. We'll see, right? So we'll see what the 4-cost is. But yeah, definitely interesting. I mean, Zabu's still really good. Zabu being at 5-cost is probably still playable. Like you can still do it. It does make things like Zabu, like Rock. What's the card called? Korg Dark Hawk turn 6 meaningful. It's interesting. The card's still probably strong. 4 power base is high in my opinion. I think you could make it 3 power base and it'd still be good. Generally, you have what? You have like 4 or 5 cards in your deck usually. So depending on what archetype you're playing, so it's like a 412, 414, 512, 514 base, which is pretty powerful. Honestly, like 512 is Gamora with the proc, and that's without doing anything at all. You play Darkhawk, it's a 516, right? You play Korg, it's quite good. So definitely a powerful card. With the change, I do think it's worse though. So, and you have to build differently, which is probably the biggest change. I'm not a fan, but I understand it. I'm not a fan though. I will say that, but I understand where they're coming from. This has definitely been one of the best cards forever. And if you want to change the metagame, you got to change some of the higher performing cards. And this has been good forever, so it has that consistency factor. Fair enough. I understand it. I don't like it. This card is one of my favorites. So yeah, hard to agree with. Moving on, we do have Forge. So Forge is going from a 1/1 to a 2/2. The ability is the same. So essentially, it's just becoming a 2/2. I'd like to see what they have to say about this one first. So funny enough, this is the exact Forge change you started internally all those months ago. It's been a wild ride. Forge is the greatest cage strategy of what we like about OTA balancing. Things could ebb and flow. For the last few months, Forge has been a linchpin card in multiple decks. This feels like a destroy nerf. Now that I read what they're saying, it feels like destroy, because they've been trying to target destroy with Hulkbuster, and now this also feels like a destroy nerf. It's also absorbing brood, like Forge absorbing brood. It's kind of a nerf there. It's a little bit less relevant because Forge on 2 into brood on 3 to absorbing on 4 is the same, right? But something interesting. And not a lot of people are playing that deck anyway. So maybe it's not. Maybe this is just destroy focused. I don't really destroy and bounce. Probably for those two particular archetypes. The other, I don't really see any other archetypes that are really abusing Forge like those two. So yeah. It's been a linchpin card for more decks, and more importantly, really dwarfing the influence of other 1-cost cards. So that is interesting to say. Usually when you are picking 1-cost cards, there was like a standard. The standard used to be Sunspot, then it got nerfed. Then it was Kitty Pryde, and then they got nerfed. Then it's like Nebula now. But it's Nico. I would say Nico's like the premium 1-drop right now. But there are some others now. I would say like it's more balanced. Nico, people are playing Spider-Ham, people are playing some other things like as well. Zero is still pretty high in play rate, things like that. So, but it's interesting. I do think Forge is pretty good, but it is very particular. It was a 1/3 in essence, so it's not like the 1/4 baseline is where you're really, really happy to have a 1-drop. So interesting to say. In fact, Forge has appeared among the top 5 most played cards of all in the game some weeks. I just think that's just because of its popularity in Destroy decks. Destroy is like one of the most popular decks, and Forge is like in every single one of them. So, I don't know. It's been a bit much, so we're dialing Forge down to reduce that impact. We expect to improve a few 1-cost cards to compensate for their loss in the future. Yeah, some of the improved cards are in here, so we'll talk about them here. After I talk about it, this just seems like a destroyed nerf to me. I'm okay with it. You can still play it. It hurts, right? It it felt better to play it on one, and Deadpool same turn, that kind of thing. I do agree that it's very good, and I can understand the change. I don't hate this one. I don't hate it, and I also have to see what the other. I mean, I know what the one cost changes are, but it's important to notice what other one costs have they changed to make up for this. First one is Ant-Man, and I think this is a great change. Personally, Ant-Man needs a little bit of a buff. Like a 1/4 is good, but you do have to invest quite a bit for Ant-Man, and it also makes like Zoo decks a little bit better because people aren't really playing Zoo decks, right? Black Swan decks, people aren't playing that as much, so buffing that helps. A 1/5 Ant-Man makes sense. Also means that ongoing decks are a little bit better. If you play this with Onslaught, you're actually getting quite a good buff. It goes from a 1/5 to a 1/9 with Onslaught. That's really meaningful. So I'm down with Ant-Man buff. Don't really have a problem with this one. Ant-Man's one of our favorite cards, playing well with new players. Given the inherent disadvantages of being a one cost, putting a little extra power Ant-Man's conditional shouldn't shake two things up, but being a meaningful amount of additional friend, I'm in agreement, sure. Next up, we have Chavez as well. So Chavez, they're trying to make it playable. The 2/3+2 just feels horrible when you compare it to Forge, which makes sense. Right? I'd rather play Forge than Chavez. So now they're going to try to make Chavez a little bit more meaningful. So it's a 1/2+2. So it's a 1/4, which is significantly better. So I could definitely see this seeing play. This might actually see play comparative to the previous version. So I'm kind of okay with this. I wouldn't say that. I mean, I might see this in like Surfer decks. That's really where I see this being played, if at all. So it's a little bit better. It still has that like risky or the inconsistency factor of it being your top card and not like the deck card you play like Forges, but it does have the extra 1/2 buff compared to 1/1. So I could see it seeing play. As we're sending Forge to 2 costs, it made sense to swap Chavez down to 1 cost. These effects are similar enough to seem like they overlap, but America has proven slightly too weak, while Forge was very strong at 1. Both changes together should leave us with 2 reasonably healthy cards. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it just depends if people want to play Chavez, right? Like a lot of the benefit of Forge was you could kill it, you could carnage it, you could just throw it into lanes that destroy, don't care. Here you do have a 1/2 body, which does matter. So, and it is less consistent. I do think you'll see more play, but it wasn't seeing much play at all. So I'm okay with this change. Next up, we have Lockjaw. So this is definitely the other like big change in my opinion. The Darkhawk change is the big one, and then this Lockjaw change is also very big as well. You could argue that this is more important than the Darkhawk change, but I'm biased, so whatever. But yeah, Lockjaw is going from a 3/2 to a 4/5. So this is worse. This hurts a lot. A lot of the really good Lockjaw decks were able to play Lockjaw on turn 4 or turn 3 or turn 4 and still be good, right? Either you play turn 3 as a setup, or you play turn 4 with the 1 cost rock or stone or whatever you were going to play. So now it's a little bit harder to do that. You do gain some power, but it's obviously not as much as like getting a random infinite a turn earlier. So definitely a nerf, and it just looks like they wanted to nerf the card. And I agree, because I lost to this stupid card pulling Leech from a tournament I played recently. It just pulled Leech every time, and I was like, come on, dude. Very annoyed. So I can understand Lockjaw is maybe too good. It's been good forever, and it's a problematic card because when it's good, it's really good, right? And they've tried to nerf it before. It wasn't 1 per turn the whole time. They nerfed it to 1 per turn. It's still good. So they're trying a little bit more drastic measure. They're making it 4 costs instead of 3. Hey, it works with Zabu. Zabu's a problem. You can't balance cards. But yeah, definitely just seems like they wanted to nerf the card and make it less problematic. Because right now, the most popular decks both use Zabu. And that's kind of an issue in my opinion, right? I feel like if a card is too popular, it should be nerfed. I know some people disagree with that, but I just think like you want a healthy balance where you're not thinking, okay, I put this card into every deck because it's so, it's so universally good, right? Chavez was that, Lockjaw is that right now. So kind of interesting that they kind of are following that trend. Hela and variations of Thanos, which are two of the most popular decks in the game, have both leaned heavily on Lockjaw lately. And while the decks are fair in performance, the card is a bit of an outlier. Lockjaw is fairly clearly a design risk, as cards that cheat energy and kind of draws cards. Yeah, I see what they're saying. It kind of draws. Like, if you want Hela, right? One way is to draw Hela. Another way is to fish for it with Lockjaw. So it kind of draws cards. I see what they're saying. However, Lockjaw is also a blast to play with. We've tried to maintain a good balance around the effect, but in the last few months, it's been a growing concern that even affects future design work. So basically, they're trying to design cards, but they're like, oh, what about Lockjaw? Which is true. Moving Lockjaw up to 4 cost takes away an entire turns of swap, which is a big loss, but raising the raw potential quite a bit. We're compensating that with a healthy amount of extra power. Yeah, I still think you're going to play this card, which is, maybe just a testament to how broken it was, but I still think you'd play this in Thanos. Hello Lockjaw maybe is a little bit harder, because especially with the Black Knight version, because now it fits the same role as the sword. So that's a little bit harder to justify. So maybe the Black Knight Lockjaw versions will change a bit. But I think in Thanos, with all the stones, it's hard to argue, like, yeah, this is still probably just good enough to play. So interesting nerf. I think this is just like we want less Lockjaw in the meta, so we're nerfing it. And I understand the card is a problem, so I understand this. I don't really have too much of an issue with it. There's a car beeping outside. All right, let's move on. Next up, we have Swordmaster. I like this personally. I think the card isn't really seeing play. There's not that much room for it, especially now that Corvus has come out. Corvus is a 3/5 discard 2, gain 1 max power. Like, what? And then Swordmaster's a 3/6. It's so awful in comparison. So definitely I understand this change. And I'm glad that they recognize that, hey, we can't be making stronger cards over time and then having these cards just die into obscurity. So yeah, I'm down with this. It's fair. Makes sense to me. And it might see play in other decks like Surfer or just random discard decks or tempo decks, right? Like a 3/7 is not bad. Like if you zero Swordmaster, like that's not horrible. Like I don't think that's a crazy turn. It's basically Gladiator but with 1 less power. So that seems pretty reasonable. So this might just be like a pretty good tempo piece in some decks. So I like this change quite a bit. It's fairly clear that our simpler discard enablers struggle to remain competitive, as we've made many strong options in recent seasons. However, even in smaller collections, Swordmaster is struggling to become a reliable option. Wow. What that says is new players still suck. Like, it's with new players, this card is still bad, which is horrible to hear. So which is indicating that the card could improve for sure. Like if this card is still bad with people with new collections or in like the lower meta game, that's just pretty sad to see, because it should be better. This buff makes Swordmaster a more reasonable substitute or contemporary card in discard decks looking for a robust amount of power. Yeah, I like it. I think this is a good buff. I like +1 buffs to like weaker cards and just see if it makes sense. So yeah, this I like. Next up, we have Vulture as well. I think this is the last one. So Vulture is going from a 3/3 to a 3/3. So I mean, nothing. But it's now getting +6 power instead of +5 power every time it moves. I like this because it means the first time you move it is still under Shang-Chi, which is what it should be. And then the next time you move it, which is what's before, it's going to be over Shang-Chi. So I like this. I think this makes sense now that you've changed Shang-Chi's breakpoints. This to me is like their growing updated list of cards based on Shang-Chi. And it's hilarious how impactful like Shang-Chi is, because you've changed Shang-Chi. You now have the freedom to change like 30 cards in the game, which before you can't do because Shang-Chi just makes the buff worse. So just interesting, right? How much impactful this one particular tech card becomes, right? Because of some of the limitations. So pretty cool. But yeah, I think this is a fair buff. Like, Move needs help. Move needs more help than this, right? Dagger change was useful, but it's still, Move is still like not performing well. So keep buffing it until you hit a breakpoint where it makes sense. Heimdall change was also impactful. Once again, not enough. So maybe we'll get there. This increase to Vulture movability is another instance of ongoing trend we're drawing, which is adding a little bit of strength to older cards that have narrowed as the game grows. There was a time where playing Vulture was synonymous with playing a move deck, but now everyone just plays Silky Smooth, Craven Move. Yeah, no one's playing Vulture in that deck. I agree. And a lot of the move decks are like Move has a lot of good 3-cost cards, right? You have Spider-Man, you have Polaris. That's it. I'm kidding, but yeah, there's a good amount, so it makes sense that like Vulture can be on the sideline there. With Shang-Chi now eliminating, yeah, of course, yeah, yeah, it makes sense. I agree with the rest of your statement. However, those are the changes. There's a lot of changes here, and these are very impactful changes. I mean, Vulture not as much, Swordmaster not as much, in my opinion. Lockjaw is a very huge, like this alone is already going to change the metagame, which is pretty cool. Chavez and Ant-Man is nice. Forge might matter a little bit, right? Because Destroy is super popular, so this is going to affect Destroy. So that is pretty impactful. Darkhawk is also super impactful. So a lot of quite impactful changes, and then the Adam Warlock is like maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not confident this is good, but I'm down to be surprised here. But yeah, definitely a pretty impactful metagame change here. We'll have to see though. What goes on, any cool decks you make with some of these changes. But yeah, those are the OTA changes. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next one. Educated calling snap. Once you watch him, you won't go back. He'll teach you to marvel snap. Your skills will be